Hello and welcome to this edition of City Hall Insider. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and we're going to talk the port today. We're going to talk to John Regan. He is the Director of Policy and External Affairs for the New Bedford Port Authority. That's a long title to have.
It is.
On your business card, for sure.
Yeah, and thank you for the invitation.
The port is certainly, the mayor talks about it a lot. And as you and I were talking, and you know, we've talking to the mayor in the past. I mean, the port is what separates New Bedford from a lot, probably most cities in the state and around the region, as a matter of fact.
And around the country, it's very unique.
So I mean, it's a great thing, and I know the mayor recently did a state of the city and talked about the development there, and we'll get into that in a second. But it's constantly changing. Because there's constant things going on there, from fishing to offshore wind to you name it. It's everywhere. You are, again, the Director of Policy and External Affairs. So for people who don't know, probably you don't know, what do you do?
Well, we have a staff over at the Port Authority of about 8 people. And we manage the city's assets on the port, which include 16 leased properties and their associated land, 16,000 linear feet of bulkhead, and 6 public piers on the port, which we manage, which is Pier 3, Steamship Pier, Homer's Wharf, Leonard's Wharf, North and South Terminal. We also manage Pope Island's Marina. It's a 198 boat slip for recreational vessels.
And they're coming in now.
So it's a very busy time at the port. So we're in search of an executive director at this point. Unfortunately, our new executive director, who started in July, had family matters to attend to and moved overseas. So we're in the process of searching for an executive director. We also have a finance director, grant administrator, legal counsel, engineering, and project manager. So we have a very good staff, very committed staff, highly educational, and they do a great job. The Port Authority is also governed by a 7-member board, with the mayor being the chair of the board, and they meet monthly to vote on any issues that come up that deal with our work. Our primary charge is to support the port with the implementation of best management practices, and trying to find resources to keep developing the port in a positive way. To this end, the goal of the authority is to keep New Bedford as the #1 fishing port in the country, and expand on existing businesses and capitalizing on new opportunities such as offshore wind to keep it an economic engine, not only for the city of New Bedford, but for the region as a whole.
You were talking, how New Bedford is unique, and I don't think people realize it's the diversity of the waterfront, the port, that makes it, because you do have, obviously, the most valuable fishing fleet in the country. You've got the potential for offshore wind. You've got the recreational boaters. So there's a lot of, for lack of little interest, smaller interest in the big picture, and that's going to make your job interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. So around the region, there are very few fishing ports. You talk about Gloucester, Point Judas, and then down south in Jersey, Virginia, there's a few. But the size and location of the Port of New Bedford is very unique, and it provides a great opportunity to, as I said, driving as an economic engine for the whole state. When I first started this job, the thing that struck me is the 2-mile stretch along the harbor accounts for 2% of the entire Massachusetts gross domestic product, which is amazing. It's like this 2-mile stretch, and it continues to grow. And it's a very busy port. We're in the process of undertaking a port use and vessel management plan, just so we're prepared for when the offshore wind starts their development, that we have space for all these vessels. You know, a number one priority, and it always will be, is the fishing industry. So with the new developments that are going on, we want to make sure that our fishing industry has enough space, as the proper infrastructure to continue to thrive as it has been for 200 years.
And it's not just the vessels themselves, which are in and of themselves independent businesses. You're talking about the processors, the repair shops, the fuel depots, and there's a lot of businesses. When we talk about supporting the industries, there's a lot of businesses there that depend on the port and vice versa.
It's amazing, and you know, the onshore business is a huge part, whether it's fuel, maintenance. You know, there's so many different businesses down there, and it's all part of the whole picture. Obviously, you know, and with this new development coming in, and even the restaurants and coffee shops and ice cream stands, you know, it's just the whole port itself is just going through an amazing transformation.
You are a local kid, as they say. Did you, and so, I mean, so you're not unfamiliar to the port, but when you first started, did you sit there and say, wow, I didn't know blank about the port?
Exactly, and as again, when I mentioned about the 2% of the GDP, is just the $11 billion economic activity that goes, it's incredible. I grew up in Dartmouth, Massachusetts. I now live in Norton, Massachusetts, and for the past 23 years, I worked at the Massachusetts State House. I worked with then former Rep. John Quinn to the year 2010. Then I moved over to State Senator Michael Rush, who represents half of the city of Boston, Westwood, Dedham, Norwood, down up in that area. So 23 years at the State House was a long time. You know, we obviously we've been through a lot over the years, and I've worked on local economic issues and environmental issues, as well as, you know, statewide issues. When Senator Rush in the Senate, he was chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee. So I wrote 4 omnibus pieces of veterans legislation that passed unanimously through the House and Senate and signed by the governor from 2012 to 2018, and it was made Massachusetts #1 in the country for providing benefits and services to our veterans. So I have that legislative and policy experience, which I brought down here. I started, this was a brand new position on Director for Policy and External Affairs, and I started back in December, and it's good to be back in the area. My parents still live over in Dartmouth, next to Buttonwood Park. My wife is assistant superintendent of schools in the city of Attleboro. I have a 15-year-old daughter in Norton High School and a 13-year-old son at Norton Middle School. So it's it's about a half-hour commute down here from Norton. Yeah. But it's been going well, and it's a busy time down here.
So with your background, obviously, and there has to be obviously communication between the state and the federal government, because obviously these projects cost a lot of money, and the city needs support. But obviously there's a benefit to having these projects done for everybody.
Correct.
And the relationships matter, because you have relationships with those folks. Is it difficult in this time right now to get funding for projects?
Well, to tell you the truth, over the past couple of years, and especially now, we've been involved with modernizing the port as much as we can. And we're trying to take advantage of this historical funding opportunities and money that's out there. On the federal level, the federal infrastructure bill and the ARPA funding, and on the state level, we have the state offshore wind initiatives. So there's this pile of money there that you haven't seen in a long time for ports and port infrastructure. So it's key to have a position like this who, you know who the actual players are. You've dealt with them in the past, whether federal, state, or local level, where you can, have a face-to-face with them and lay out our priorities, because how economics change and the economy goes up and down. 10 years from now, or even 5 years from now, these funding opportunities are not going to be there.
They'll all be dried up by then.
So now is the time to pounce, as you say, as much as we can. Just yesterday, we filed an application, grant application to the federal government for a $42 million reconstruction and renovation project on Leonard's Wharf. Okay, so it was a 6-month process for this application. You need all this information. The majority of the money will come from the feds, but there'll be some matching funds from the state, from the city, and from us in the port. This would reconstruct Leonard's Wharf, build it out, extend it, and again, more space for our fishing fleet. And these, in the future, Homer's Wharf, we're going to try to do the same thing. The last time they were reconstructed was in 1975.
That's a long time.
So it's a long time that the end-of-life structure, and it's key to our port infrastructure. So this funding opportunity is, past few years, is where you really have to take advantage because you don't know in the future.
Talk about too here, I just want people to understand too, obviously there is the dynamic that the state does play a role on the waterfront because they do have State Pier and they do have the Marine Commerce Terminal. For folks who don't know, explain those versus the properties obviously that the Port Authority oversees.
Okay. As again, we oversee the city's assets on the port. There's two sections of the port, State Pier, where the C Street runs out of, and also if we have any cargo ships that come in, break bulk cargo ship, not the huge container ships, but the break bulk. If they come in, they go directly to State Pier. It's run by the state. So we work directly. They tell us the schedule of these boats coming in. But they do their own thing. And then the Marine Commerce Facility run by Mass CEC is going to be the primary location for the installation of offshore wind. So they're going to put the turbines there. They're going to develop the turbines and take them out to the leasing areas where the wind farms are. So there's a lot of development going on in the Marine Commerce Terminal. And again, it's collaboration. It's like telling us what they're doing,
right,
what's happening on the port. And we do the same with them. But they're city-owned assets. State-owned assets, I'm sorry. Different with our marina where the state owns it, but we run and manage it through a memorandum of understanding. So we run the marina in the 198 slip.
There's so many projects, as the mayor was highlighting. And why don't we start chatting about those a little bit, because I think that's people are going to see if they haven't seen. I mean, there's going to be a lot of work that you see going on along the waterfront. I know the Eversource plant the mayor was talking about at his State of the City. A great opportunity, a site that's been vacant for so long, but it's going to have a usefulness now that it hasn't had in a long time.
Yeah, we can start with that. So that's a private development, the Sprague Eversource site. 13 acres. It's going to be demolished, and it's going to turn into a bulkhead and for offshore wind and offices. So that's a private development that's going on. So that's going to be the main. So with the Marine Commerce Terminal and the Foss Terminal, that's going to be the main locations for our wind industry. We recently awarded, 2 years ago, we received a MARAD, federal DOT grant for building a bulkhead on North Terminal. And again, this is for our fishing fleet. This is for making the best of our situations, our infrastructure situations on the waterfront. So this was a $27.9 million grant, and the bid was won by D.W. White of Acushnet, and they're actually starting doing the prep work to do that as well. Then we have the North Terminal 2 project, where we received a $20 million EDA grant, Economic Development Administration grant, again federal, for more docking space on North Terminal 2. I just mentioned the big Leonard's Wharf grant that we applied for, so fingers crossed. This will be probably the biggest project that the port has undertaken if successful of that grant. And that probably in a 2-year time frame.
And you said, and you were telling me off camera too, I mean, you've got still the dredging going on.
Yep, the dredging is continual ongoing, and we'll dredge in phase 5, different phases of dredging which continue to go on all the time, which is important for the new ships that are coming in, the vessels, for offshore wind, and obviously, if we open up new spaces for our fishing fleet. So.
And in your role too, because you're dealing with legislation and at the federal and state level, I mean, obviously you are close to the fishermen with their concerns that they have, as well as the offshore wind, because I know the offshore wind issue is still, there's bills right now that are in conference committee trying to get settled right now.
So
balancing the two isn't easy, but as you said, there's opportunities.
There is opportunities. One of my jobs is to, the external relations part of it is to make sure the offshore wind industry and the fishing industry coexist. Again, our number one priority is our fishing industry, and it's been around for 200 years. So there's a nervousness there. What's this going to do to our fishing industry? This offshore wind is going to hurt our gear. Are we going to lose our catch? So ideally, on a state level with mitigation, the first contract with Vineyard Wind, they set up a $1.5 million fund for the fishing industry to use as they see fit. So I actually am on the state board that oversees where this money's going, and the first meeting is going to be in a month. So there'll be $1.5 million out there for the fishing industry. Whether it's for advertising, whatever they need. Even further on the federal level, BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, dealing with regulations regarding mitigation. So there's going to be draft regulations coming out for the whole East Coast on how do we take care of our fishermen, our fleet, and make sure the industry continues to thrive. So, we often write letters of support, written testimony. Every time there's guidance that's issued, we want to weigh in and make sure that we support, our port.
It must be interesting too, because things do, like you said, the industry changes, and it's changing quick. And I don't mean every day, but I mean, like you said, you've got 5-year, 10-year, things happen. So the things that are coming down the pike that you're looking at legislatively at both the federal and state level, it just changes on the dime. You've got to be, and you've got to be, I mean, the port has to be able to shift gears, which can't be easy, but it's got to be done.
Correct. And again, as I mentioned before, most importantly, because of offshore wind, there's an opportunity there where everyone can benefit. The extraordinary amount of money that's available now, is due to offshore wind. So, in effect, that's going to help the fishing industry down here because of our infrastructure, because of the, acknowledgement that, we have to take a look at how this is going to affect the fishing industry, any mitigation aspects of it. How do they coexist? So, I know there's a nervousness out there, but there's also, a lot of opportunity to, develop the port, and which will benefit, all its users. And then, so a lot of it too, my job is to keep the port updated on what's going on. So we have a email database, which I often send out, any kind of announcements to all our port users. I've developed a monthly newsletter to go out to our port users that I started in January to make sure everyone's up to date with everything, any projects going on, any local news, any events. So the port is not just about fishing and offshore wind; it's the whole entirety.
And the city uses, Pier 3 for events, and I know there's more of an effort to try to get it to be more business, more to bring people to the port. Talk about that sort of aspect of the waterfront.
Yeah, as you see, especially Pier 3 down there, where we just had the movie filming, so there's a lot of different movies that come in and do different filmings on one of our piers. So we have the Black Whale, you know, and yet the ice cream and the clam shack, and now the Waterfront building is going to turn into Marisol's Cafe. So there's a lot of development going on. And then in front of State Pier, there's RFIs going out to build different shops, different restaurants on the front portion of State Pier, because, you know, with the traffic from C Street, and especially in the summer days, it's a very busy, small area.
And why is that important, do you think, for people to understand that too? Why is that so important to get those smaller businesses open, but to bring people down to the port too?
Yeah. Well, it's a clean port too. I mean, you walk down the fishing piers and you walk down the port, and it's, you know, it's a nice journey down there.
Yeah.
And with these businesses and restaurants and coffee shops, it's just maximizing its potential down there, and it just brings a lot of people. There's a lot of traffic. It's just going to get busier. You know, people working on these boats, these offshore wind vessels, they need a place to stay. They need to eat. They need to. Their families might be here.
Yeah.
They need to, you know, do activities. So it's just continuing to evolve.
So it's interesting too, because as you talk about the port and the legislation, I mean, but you've got RFPs out for businesses. I mean, it's your role in the port in itself. I mean, it's not. I mean, the definition of what people might think of the Port Authority is not what it is, because you're dealing with the mom and pop business downtown, or on the waterfront, I should say.
Yeah, and it's, you know, whether it's private development, you know, or public development, or, you know, whatever's going on, we have our hand in pretty much everything. You know, we don't have a say in everything, but
right.
we have our hand, because we have to be updated, and we have to be on top of things as they develop down in the port, because ultimately when, you know, something is going on, or it's, you know, people have questions, you know, the first call will be to us, and, you know, we're there to try to answer them for them.
And I understand too, obviously the fishing industry and the offshore wind, but you've got the recreational component too. And in New Bedford's the marine, not the terminal, I can't think
Marina.
of the marina.
Yep.
Off the top of my head, I was drawing a blank there. The marina's always been there, and you always seem to have a lot of recreational vessels in the harbor. And that's I know that's a thing, an aspect that you don't want to lose either.
No, and that's part of our, like, we're undergoing our port use and vessel management plan, because the 198 slip boat, you know, is full.
Always is.
Always full.
There's a waiting list, my understanding,
There's
for
a waiting list, and it's always full, so we have to deal with parking. But now we have to deal with some kind of schedule with, you know, these offshore wind, these huge vessels that come in with these turbines. You know, we got to make sure that, you know, number one, the fishing industry thrives.
Can get in and out, right?
Get in and out when they want to. Same in the summer months. You know, so there's got to be a vessel management plan. So you're not waiting, you know, an hour and a half at the hurricane barrier, you know, to get in or out. So it's going to be challenging moving forward, but, you know, I think, you know, it's doable.
And all those things are important to the overall aspect of the port when you really think about it. I mean, obviously you need the fishing vessels. That's the heart. But the offshore wind's important, and the recreational boaters are important too. I mean, I remember the last tropical storm that we had. I mean, it was a safe haven for recreational boaters, and they were putting so many boats in the harbor to keep them safe. But I mean, that's just the reputation it has, that the port is welcoming pretty much for all vessels.
Yeah, and it's very popular port in the sense that we have the barrier in case of storms. You know, these storms are more powerful with climate change, and, you know, you see everyone wants to get into this port when there's huge storms. So even with the barrier, you know, it does a job on our infrastructure with these storms. So, but we're lucky to have the barrier, you know, and it's very useful, and you know, very important to the port.
So, as the mayor was saying in the State of the City, one of those projects is a huge deal. To have all of these projects is just a tremendous accomplishment. So people should start seeing things happening down the waterfront. the work going on, right?
Yep. Exactly. They'll see the work. They'll see the machines. They'll see the people doing this work.
And that means jobs too.
That means a lot of jobs, which is important. But if you're not familiar with the port, like say we take North Terminal, so it's near the EPA building. So right now it's an old barge and dock type thing. But if you're not familiar with it, so we're going to be building it out and have a nice bulkhead. But it's not going to look too much different to the naked eye.
It's going to look newer though.
It's going to look newer, but it's going to be, much more useful for our port. And you need to keep up with the infrastructure, especially what's going on down there. So it's very important.
So with these things that happen too, is there more now of a focus on, I don't want to say renewable, but every so often a schedule for repairs and what have you, as 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, these things are going to be worked on constantly, so you don't have to go through these huge projects?
Yeah, correct. So as I mentioned before, the last time Leonard's and Homer's Wharf was reconstructed is 75.
Right.
But I think with these new grant application, with the money available, I think part of the application is you have to go out 70 years.
Oh, wow.
50 to 70 years, I believe. So your plans for whatever you do, you're going to make sure that it's sustainable for 50 to 70 years.
Wow.
Moving forward. So we don't have to come back to the feds in 20 years or so.
Right. Well, it's huge. Got about a minute left, and I just want to. So right now, what would you say is the immediate thing that people can expect, that people can see and should expect down there right now?
Just the activity. We're starting this North Terminal project, and then a year the North Terminal 2 project, and again over at the Mass CEC, they're going to be doing huge development over at the Marine Commerce Terminal. So you're going to and plus the FOSS Terminal, the private development.
So those are all starting soon.
North Terminal and FOSS are starting
right now,
very soon.
Yeah.
Now, already the prep work you can be seeing. So again, you're going to see a lot of activity down there. And if there's any street closings or any restrictions of any way that you'll be hearing from the port. Hopefully it's at the minminimum,
right.
But you'll be hearing from us for any updates and continue and contact the port if you're interested in getting on our newsletter and my updates, because it'd be helpful, even if you're not directly a port user or living around the port. If you're ever down here using it or using the C Street, it's good to know what's going on.
And just go down there and check out one of the restaurants or whatever. It's especially in the summertime. It's a great time to go down.
And I think this Sunday is the Taste of the South Coast on Pier 3. Get a chance to get down there.
And they have so many events now on Pier 3. I know the mayor has always done concerts down there on a Friday night, or you've got United Way has their events, or Taste of South Coast. There's a lot of events that take place on Pier 3. So it brings people down there.
It does, yeah. And difficult winter with weather and COVID-related issues. So I think this summer is going to be very active down there, and it's important to get out and see what's going on.
Good. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for
again.
coming in today.
Okay.
John Regan, our guest from the New Bedford Port Authority. I'm Jim Marshall. Welcome. I appreciate you coming in. It's City Hall Insider, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Brandon met a girl on a dating app. He finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving.
She must be a keeper.